Hey everyone, I'm going to go over workflow between Rhino and Lumion using Lumion's plugin for Rhino called Live Sync. So if you go to Lumion.com, you should all have Lumion already installed. And then if you go into products, and somewhere in here should be a link for their Live Sync plugin, which you need to download as well. We'll try support and learning. And then go to downloads. And under here you want to download and install Live Sync for Rhino. And just make sure Rhino's closed before you install it. And you should be all set. So there's two things you need to install: Lumion as a program, and then the Live Sync plugin for Rhino. Once you do that, I'll provide you guys with a 3D model in Rhino of Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. We'll use that as sort of a test for this tutorial. So install those, and once you have those installed, go ahead and open up your Rhino 6 and this Falling Water file. Okay, so if you have Lumion and the plugin installed correctly, you should have this little Lumion menu item up at the top. It should create a toolbar for you, and you're going to want that open. If it's not there, come up here and do Show Live Sync Toolbar, and this should be here. So this is the model we're going to be working with. A couple of tips in terms of organizing your Rhino model. You want to organize everything through your layers, and I usually organize them by either type or material. Material is probably a better way to go because we're going to be assigning materials to specific pieces of geometry in order to get them to have the right materials in Lumion. So it takes some time to look at how everything is organized. Got decks, doors, the frame, and the door panel, railings, glass, foundation. And the idea is that each one of these is going to be assigned its own specific material. And then when we hop in the Lumion, things are selectable by material. So you'll get to see what effects that has. You'll also notice there's no ground plane. That really depends on whatever project you guys are working on. Some of you might want one in this case. You know, for those of you who have a site and you have sidewalks and streets and it's more of an urban setting, you might want to keep all that geometry. For this, it's kind of like a house in the middle of nowhere, and there's a lot of vegetation and hills and rocks and all that kind of stuff. So we're actually going to make the landscape for this in Lumion. So right now this kind of feels like it's floating. One thing you do want to do is make sure that the bottom of whatever it is you're modeling is sitting on the ground plane. So you can turn on your grid, and then just make sure whatever the bottommost part of your model is located at elevation 0. It's not super important, but you'll understand why when we hop into Lumion. So I'm going to switch to rendered mode. And you'll notice that right now everything has the same material on it. So the first thing I'm going to go over with you guys just quickly for Rhino is how to assign specific materials to objects in Rhino. And that's going to inform how Lumion reads and understands materials when we jump into it. So let's just do a quick test. Right now I'm just going to take let's go with balls. Just going to right click, select objects. I'm going to come down here. If you don't have your properties tab or these options, you can type properties, and it will show up. You can type rendering, and that will pop up. What we're concerned with is our materials tab. So I'm going to select all of our walls. I'm going to go into our materials tab, and I'm going to add a new material. I'm going to click custom. I'm going to name this walls. Then I'm going to come down here, and there should be a color option. There we go. I'm just going to change the color to like a brown. And then once I have that set, you're going to right click on the material and assign to objects. Okay, so I just assigned that material to all those walls. I actually don't want these three vertical pieces to have this material, so I'm going to right click on default, assign to objects, and then so now these are all the walls that are going to receive a stone material in Lumion. I don't care what it looks like in Rhino, doesn't matter. I just use the color to get a visual on what the different materials are. And so what we'll do is we'll go through each layer, select all the geometry, and start assigning individual materials. But before we do that, let's open up our live sync to Lumion so you can start to see the effects of applying different kinds of materials. So what we're going to do is come up to our Lumion toolbar, and if you hover over the play button, it should show start live sync. So you can hit play, and then this will pop up. If Lumion isn't already open, click yes, and let this open up. Okay, so now we're in Lumion. It looks kind of weird, and I think that's because we're zoomed into our geometry, so it's not looking all that right. So what you want to do is W, A, S, and D on your keyboard are your kind of panning and walking around controls. So if you hold down S, it's going to back you out, and you should start to see your object. So it's W, A, S, and D. And then E, or Q, and E lift you up and down. And then your right mouse button looks around. So it's, the controls are kind of difficult to get used to at first, but it's basically W, S, A, and D, E, and Q, and then holding the mouse, your right mouse click. You can hold down Shift with your pinky, and it makes the panning go a little bit faster. So it just takes a little bit of time to get used to it. But what you'll see is now that I've live synced Rhino to Lumion, the materials should start to resemble what they are in Rhino. And that's what we're going for. And then what we'll do is we'll assign a material real quick, just so you guys can see how you start to select individual objects in Lumion. Because what you'll notice is if I hover over this, it's one complete object. I can't select individual surfaces. So what we're going to do, just like real quick, assign a material. We're going to come down to the paint bucket, so materials tab, click it. Now when you hover over your objects, you'll notice that everything that has our default material is selectable, and everything that has that wall material is selectable. So we're going to click on the wall. It's going to open up our material library. We'll go to outdoor. These are stone, so I'm going to click under brick, and you have a ton of built-in options that you can choose from. I'm not going to get too crazy in trying to match the material perfectly. We'll get into custom materials a little bit later, so I'm just going to pick kind of a nice looking stone. So let's go with bricks 008A. And you just click it, and it should automatically start to map your material. Now Lumion does a really good job in mapping material. Everything looks pretty good. It's the right size. It's got some bump to it. It picks up lighting really well. And you don't really have a tiling effect, okay? Everything looks really smooth and nice. So there's not really a lot more you have to do in terms of creating material. So we just applied a stone material to all of those walls, okay? So what we're going to do is, once you've applied your material, you have to hit this little Save Changes button down at the bottom. So we'll click that, and then that material is locked in. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hop back into Rhino, and we're going to start to give materials to everything based on how we want to apply materials in Lumion. So I'm going to go to Decks, right-click, select Objects, and these are all the outdoor decks. So I'm going to add a material, custom, let's rename it. I'm going to call this tan concrete. Scroll down to the color option for this material. Just going to give it kind of like an orangey or khaki color, I guess. Click OK. And then right-click on my material, assign to objects. Right. Now there's a couple of other items in this model in particular that are also going to get that material. For example, all of these roofs will have that. So we can go down to Roof, select Objects, right-click on Tan Concrete, and assign to Objects. And all of these railings are also going to get that material as well. So I'll right-click on Railings, select Objects, right-click, assign. Okay. The next thing we'll do is all of the window frames. So those have kind of a reddish color to them. So I'm going to go into Windows, select Objects, create a new material, custom, call this window frame, hit enter, change the color to a reddish color. And then right-click, assign to objects. All right. Now what you'll notice is, as I'm doing this, if I switch back into Lumion, things are going to start updating. If you get a moment where it doesn't look like things are updating correctly, notice how everything is red. For whatever reason, Lumion thinks that I've applied a red material to all of this, which if you go back to Rhino, clearly isn't the case. In order to fix that, all you have to do is come up to here, click Stop Live Sync, and then click the play button again. And then when you switch back into Lumion, it'll update accordingly. And then you can start kind of panning around. Okay. So now I can come in here under my material editor, select my material. Let's go into outdoor. We can go into metal and find kind of an interesting metal color. I'll just go with something like that. Or you can do something like this. Any one of these will work out okay. And again, we'll get into editing materials a little bit later. Right now, I just want you guys to get used to applying materials using the live sync. And then we also did, so I'll hit the Save Changes button, and then let's select all of our decks and roofs and railings. On the outdoor, let's go on the concrete, and let's see if there's a nice tan concrete that we can select. That one's not bad. Okay. And so we can go with something like this. And then hit the check button. So we'll hop back into Rhino. Let's do our glass. Select objects, create a new material. Call this glass. I'm not actually going to make glass material. Again, Rhino, it's just for separating out your selections. So I'll change the color, just make it blue. Okay, and then right click, assign to objects. And we're just going to save our Rhino file real quick. And then hop back into Lumion. And again, for whatever reason, it colored everything blue, not just the glass. So we're going to come back into Rhino, hit the pause button, hit the play button, just to resync it, and then it'll just be a glass. So my material editor, I'll select this glass material, go to outdoor, there's a glass option, click glass. I usually just use one of these glass panels. Stay away from the blue. It doesn't really look all that realistic. These are your best bet for just normal looking glass. And then hit the check. And then we've got, let's see what else. Our door frames, I'll select those objects. And I'm going to give those the same material that I gave the window frames. So I'm just going to come down to my window frame material and assign that material. Our door panels, we'll select those. This will create a new material for. Just name this doors, change the color, and then assign to objects. This little guy up here, I want to keep that as stone. So this brown material, so I'm just going to select that individually, come up to my walls material, right click, assign to objects. These vertical pieces here, I'll select those. I'm going to assign that concrete tan material. These foundation pieces, same thing. So concrete. And then really the only thing we have left are these staircases and our floor plates. So the floor plates, that's going to be under our floors layer. So I'll select those objects. I'm going to create a new material for this. Floors. Change the color. Let's give it like a grayish color. Right click, assign to objects. And then the stairs are going to have two materials. All the treads are going to have this tan kind of concrete material, and then these vertical bars are going to be given that red material. So I'm going to select my stairs. So select objects, and type invert. So I invert my selection, type hide. These are easier to select individually. And then I'm going to select the treads, come to our tan concrete, assign to objects, select these treads, assign to objects. And this guy over here, I'm going to select everything and assign to objects. And then, just so it's easier to select the pipes, I'm going to hide those treads. I'm going to hide those treads, select all the pipes, right click on my window frame material, and assign to objects. Those are now red. And then we type show to bring everything back. So everything now should have a material assigned to it. So I click save. I'm going to hit the pause button and then resync it. We'll go back into Lumion and everything should be updated. Now the nice thing is once a material is applied in Lumion, it's stuck on that material type that it corresponds to in Rhino. So you'll notice that the stair treads that I gave that tan concrete material automatically get that material applied to it because it's all one material, okay? Same thing with the stair treads or the stair support materials, right? They already have that red paint color to them because in Rhino, I'm using the same material for the vertical post that I am for the windows. So everything will automatically update as we go along. So let's give our floor plates a material. So I'm just going to kind of come inside real quick. Under my material editor, I'm going to select it. I'm going to go into, we can do outdoor with concrete, looks pretty nice. And then we're going to select just kind of a polished concrete. That looks really polished, like it's picking up a louder reflection, which we don't really want. So let's kind of cycle through until we find something that works just a little better. Could go with something like that. We can do something that looks pretty nice. So let's stick with this. And then the last thing is going to be these doors. So I'll hit the check mark to save the concrete floor, click the door material, outdoor. We can look at some wood. And then maybe we go with kind of a really nice dark paneled wood or something like that. Now I'm not, you want to try, like if you're doing an existing house, you can, look at photos and things like that and try and match it as best you can. Right now I'm just, trying to get you guys used to applying materials. But that looks kind of interesting, so let's stick with that. Try something a little brighter if that looks a little better. Okay. So our object is textured. Way easier than trying to use, something like V-Ray. That's where Lumion really starts to, be a useful tool in that all of these things are kind of set up automatically. And the texturing is nice. The shadows come out really well. Reflections, all that kind of stuff is already built into the materials, so we don't have to worry about taking any of that into effect. So that's how you live sync from Rhino. Set up your Rhino file so you can select individual materials in Lumion and then apply materials as needed. I'll click the check button to kind of save out those materials. So once you have this set, come down here to our little save icon, do a save as if you haven't saved it before, desktop. Just going to throw it in a folder and call this falling water and click save. And then you can come back to your build scene. Right, so the next thing we're going to get into is a little bit of landscape design and kind of giving this sort of some ground, obviously. Can't be floating or anything like that. That's probably the most time-consuming part of all of this is dealing with landscape. And so we'll be getting into that next.